Good evening and welcome to Lead Story Prime. I'm Giovanni Dennis. When does public service cross paths with politics, and who decides where the line is drawn? The recent interdiction of Dr. Aujae Dixon has reignited the debate over Jamaica's staff orders and where the legislation needs to be reviewed. Tonight we take a closer look at whether the public service and politics can be mixed. But first, the Integrity Commission report concerning allegations of procurement irregularities and conflict of interest in the award of contracts to Market Me Consulting Limited by the Ministry of Health and Wellness was tabled in Parliament today. Now, the investigation revealed, among other things, procurement irregularities and conflict of interest concerns in the award of contracts to Market Me by the Ministry of Health and Wellness in relation to a social marketing campaign. Now, we will be having to speak to us on this issue the opposition spokesman on health, Dr. Alfred Dawes. Good evening, Dr. Dawes. Can you hear me?
Hi, good evening, and good evening to all the viewers.
All right, now before we go to Dr. Dawes, just want to say that we did in fact invite the Health Minister, Dr. Christopher Tufton, but he said he will not be appearing or speaking on the matter with us tonight. First, Dr. Dawes, your reaction to this report?
Well, let me first off start off by saying that I worked with the Ministry of Health with the Jamaica moves as well as the taking responsibility tour, both of which were managed by the company in question, Market Me. And I found them to be very professional, and they executed the programs, the events quite professionally. So this is clearly not about them. What this is about is a repeated pattern that I have spoken extensively about of the Ministry of Health abusing procurement guidelines, bending rules, finding ways to circumvent the safeguards that have been put in to protect taxpayers' dollars. So this is only
Could you clarify
symptom.
what you mean by circumventing safeguards to protect taxpayers' dollar? Give me a specific example.
Specific example. So going through the report, we see that 15 contracts were awarded. All 15 were by the direct contracting method, meaning that there was no competitive bid. Nobody could have said that they can offer a similar service. And you really and truly should only go to the direct contract method if it's an emergency. And we are seeing continued abuse of this. All 15 contracts were awarded via this method. And it continued during COVID because they said it was a national emergency with the pandemic. A significant number of contracts were awarded without scrutiny, without any competitive bidding via the direct contract award process. The other thing is that 2 contracts valued of just about $53 million were never reported to the Integrity Commission under the quarterly contract awards review. Once you have certain awards pass a certain dollar figure, you should report it to the Integrity Commission so that they can look into it to see if all is well. That was not done on 2 occasions, the 2 largest contracts. And the response is that nobody knows how such an oversight happened. And we find that pattern as well at the Ministry of Health, where it's like a free-for-all with taxpayer dollars, where nobody knows where the supporting documents are. They have submitted invoices and quotations in place of invoices during COVID. And in this instance, they submitted, they awarded contracts valued over $1.5 million for reimbursements, and you cannot find out reimbursements for what. What is highly suspicious as well when we talk about finding ways to subvert the accountability process.
Well, Dr. Dawes, just to say that for those reimbursements part and for at least a couple of them, former Permanent Secretary Dunstan Bryan did say it was in relation to activities in relation to Jamaica Moves, where money was expended with the understanding by Market Me and the approval from the minister that they would have been reimbursed. I did read that.
I saw that, and on May 1st, 2019, 6 contracts were signed simultaneously. And usually when someone is is given a contract or you're outsourcing services, you should have some amount of forecasting so that you can get an idea of what your spend is. The Ministry of Health again failed in that. And that is how you end up with these reimbursements and the accusations of splintering, because 6 contracts were awarded on that day, May 1st, 2019, totaling about $8 million. So the Integrity Commission and anyone looking on must ask, did you get an $8 million value contract and split it up to avoid scrutiny? So there are a lot of red flags concerning the breaches that were found. And this is far from clearing the minister as he has claimed, because even though we may not meet the threshold for prosecution, there are clear procedural guidelines, there are clear ethical considerations, there are conflicts of interest that were not declared.
I'm sorry, Dr. Dawes, just 1 second. So you're making reference to a statement put out by the Health Minister, Dr. Christopher Tufton, in relation to the Integrity Commission report. And I just want to bring my viewers up to speed with this statement, because some of them may not be aware of what you're referring to. And now the minister says, and I'm just quoting from his release that was sent to our newsroom earlier this afternoon. He says he acknowledges the release of the Integrity Commission report and he welcomes its conclusion. He says the matter has remained in public domain for several years and at times has cast unfair doubt on not only his own integrity but also the reputations of others involved. Now, he says that this includes members of the ministry and legitimate contractors. He says he regrets any hurt or reputational damage that may have resulted. He says, however, that he is pleased that the Integrity Commission has reported no illegality by any party involved, and that he is relieved that the report brings clarity to the facts. You are saying, though, Dr. Dawes, that you still have concerns despite Dr. Tufton saying this.
Yeah, that is a PR strategy. That is strategic misdirection. So what he is doing there is to put at the focus of the debate legality versus illegality, and that was not what the report brought out. What the report brought out was the systemic undermining of the procurement rules, the breaches of the Ministry of Finance's procurement rules and the Public Procurement Act. It also spoke to a failure of the Ministry of Health to retain documents that could have been used for evidence that could have ultimately led to the threshold for prosecution being met. So they have no records. The records were late in coming in, and there are a lot of ethical concerns as to how integral the minister was in this process. He may not have directed anyone to sign any contracts, but he opened the door to Market Me by facilitating the meetings, telling the senior officers at the Ministry of Health that their position, their proposal is in alignment with his policy direction. And then in rolling out that red carpet, a proposal was made, an unsolicited proposal introduced by a company, introduced by the Minister of Health, no less. And that is a clear-cut example of insider access.
Okay. Dr. Dawes, there's so much more that we can go through and should be going through regarding this release. The Ministry of Health itself, though, your recommendation in terms of how it goes forward out of this?
They knew they were under investigation up from 2016 to 2019. They ignored that and they continued with their corruption in procurement. And we saw that being manifested during COVID. We have seen it in other procurement scandals that have subsequently taken place. They have not changed, and we have to find a way for them to be held accountable. It is lip service now that this IC report has come out where they're saying that they're going to strengthen their rules and guidelines and training officers, because they have been doing it without any repercussion. And we have to find a way as a country to hold them accountable and strengthen the procurement rules and adherence at the Ministry of Health, because it's taxpayers' money that is going out a revolving door while the hospitals continue to fall apart and people are sitting in overcrowded departments, A&E departments, and they have to pay for their investigations outside because billions of dollars are being wasted this way.
Dr. Dawes, we are completely out of time, but thank you so much for your time. We are getting reactions, just initial reactions to this report tabled in Parliament today by the Integrity Commission in relation to contracts awarded to Market Me by the Ministry of Health. Dr. Alfred Dawes is the opposition spokesman on health. Stay with us. We'll be right back. When we return from this break, the interdiction of Dr. Aujae Dixon, who ran in the September 3 general election. We'll be getting reactions from an attorney at law and a trade unionist. Stay with us.
My name is Dahoni Adlam. I am 35 years of age.
I'm Ruby Smith. I'm 83 years of age. The house what I really been into, it wasn't wholesome.
My house got burned down. It was terrible. I lost everything in the fire. Ready?
I sleep so happy.
I'm happy that I have somewhere again. The new social housing program, I am happy because it gives me a second chance and others as well.
The government, through the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, is building hope, one home at a time.
Every dream conquered is another dream gained. I land and I fly again like a jet plane. Headed straight in your direction, 'cause I'm wiser, one step closer. I'm winning 'cause I work so hard. And the music keeps on playing, and the people them I say we are my show tonight. Oh, what a feeling! Don't stop dreaming. Keep on believing in the power of the feeling. Whatever you want, take a chance. Song in your heart, step in your dance. You got the spark, don't put it down. Shine your lights
Oh, brilliant action here at Extreme E. This is unbelievable. Absolute carnage.
Hey everybody, I'm Yendi, and this is Odyssey with Yendi. In this space, we connect with some of your favorite people as they share their journeys. Here we have some unfiltered conversations as we deep dive into their inspirations, motivations, and experiences to inspire our own life journey.
Odyssey with Yendi, brought to you by Grace, Singer, and IslandNet Services.
Welcome back to Lead Story Prime here on CVM TV. I'm Giovanni Dennis. Now, the interdiction of Dr. Aujae Dixon has created a major talking point in the public sphere. Joining us in studio now are principal consultant at Employment Matters Caribbean, Carla Ann Harris Roper, and the former president of the Jamaica Civil Service Association, O'Neill Grant. But before we go to them, let's hear this overview by Amoy Harriet.
Service above self, the cornerstone of Jamaica's public service, but serve a political party, and that could cost you your job. Last month, the Southern Regional Health Authority indicted Dr. Aujae Dixon, a senior resident at the Mapen Hospital in Clarendon, for participating in the recent general election. He contested the Clarendon North Central seat on a People's National Party ticket and was defeated by the Jamaica Labour Party's Robert Morgan. Now, let's rewind to the election before that. In the same North Central Clarendon constituency, the PNP's defeated candidate Dr. Desmond Brennan, who's a general practitioner, faced administrative pressure after contesting the 2020 election. On both occasions, the men were said to have breached the 2004 staff orders for the public service. Now, according to section 4.26 of the staff orders, quote, officers are expressly forbidden to engage in any type of partisan political activity in any elections at any level. Now, this includes anyone employed in the central government service, whether permanent, temporary, or on contract, whose appointment, discipline, or termination falls under the Public Service Commission. So, in other words, if anyone draws a government paycheck from a ministry, a department, or central agency, they're considered a person employed in the central government service. So, teachers, healthcare workers, civil servants in ministries and departments, among others. Now, these persons are prohibited from campaigning, representing, endorsing, or running as a candidate for a political party unless they resign from public office.
I was served a letter of indictment that told me not to report to work until the matter had been brought to disciplinary tribunal, and if I wish to have my lawyers present, I should have a team of lawyers to represent me, or a lawyer to represent me, because I am in violation of the staff orders. I was also given the ultimatum to either resign, or if I contest it, I ran the risk of losing my pension after years of service. So because I am not only a doctor, I have other means of earning, I took the easy way out and just concentrate on my farming, and I do private practice now.
Now, critics say it's time for lawmakers to revisit the old playbook, insisting public service and politics can and should coexist. Maurice McCurdy is part of the legal team representing Dr. Dixon, who is now planning to go to court to challenge his interdiction.
As you know, Jamaica has a charter of fundamental rights and freedoms, and under the staff orders for the public service, there are certain provisions which we believe are in breach of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms. So these include Order 4.26 and Order 10.7 of the staff orders for the public service. From my perspective, what is envisioned under the Constitution for public officers does not relate in respect to Dr. Dixon, and as a matter of fact, the Southern Regional Health Authority, including provisions in the contract to state that it is subject to the staff orders, does not make Dr. Dixon a public officer.
Now, some critics have pointed to regional judicial rulings that deem similar prohibitions like that written in the staff order as unconstitutional. In Barbados, their regional orders, as seen here in section 3.18.1, prohibit active political participation by public officers. But in 2023, there was a significant constitutional challenge where the High Court found that the regulation was unconstitutional, being overly broad and disproportionate. The court court maintained it violated freedom of expression and association rights in the Constitution. Now, lawmakers there are currently reviewing the act. In neighboring St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they've gone even further. Last year, the country passed a legislation that allows public servants to run for office while on leave instead of resigning. The question now etched in the minds of many: should Jamaica adopt a similar approach? Reporting for Lead Story Prime, I'm Aujae Harriet.
Thanks so much, Aujae, for that overview. Now, let's start with you, Caroline Harris-Roper. Should Jamaica adopt a similar approach to what we're seeing in other Caribbean countries?
I think we need to address the fact that we do have our Charter of Rights, which has amended our Constitution, and there are issues that need to be tested.
Like
so
what?
The issue of whether or not your right to associate and your right of freedom of expression, if those rights need to be, differentiated from your right in the position if you are a public officer. And many people don't appreciate that the public service is quite a different thing than it's broad. So you do have various types of persons who are in the public service.
Could you break down that? Because that, I think, maybe a lot of people, a lot of us would want to understand a little bit more the different categories of public servants, who can run, who can't run, because different rules govern teachers, for example. Explain.
Right. I think the Education Act and the regulations do not speak specifically to prohibition for teachers. And in fact, I was doing some research, and way back in the 1960s, there was a case where a teacher was not employed as what was called then a head teacher, because he was very clearly having political affiliations, and the government of the day chose not to appoint the person in the role, the AGR by field case. And when it went to the Court of Appeal, it was said, even then, that the affiliation should not be something that caused the person not to be appointed if he was clearly qualified. So I think that, along with the fact that the Education Act and regulation didn't speak specifically to it, has kind of evolved into, teachers are a little different. But you do have different categories of workers. So you do have people who are in the central government, in a government ministry or department, but persons who work in statutory bodies. For example, the NHT, for example, is a statutory created body. Executive agencies, some persons as executive agency employees may be public officers, because executive agencies evolved out of central government. You have persons who may be in government companies. So like, say, Petrojam is a company where the government has so many shares in it. Many people see you working as being in the government, but it's a broad brush. When you talk about public officers, you're talking about those who are under the Civil Service Establishment Act, roles that are created out of the Constitution and governed by the public service regulations.
Yeah. I want to bring you in here, former president of the Jamaica Civil Service Association, O'Neill Grant. Explain for my viewers how this interdiction process works. What does this even mean?
Okay. An interdiction is basically a suspension. But in the public sector, it carries a little bit more punitiveness, because it's suspension with a reduction in pay. And this is a sanction before the actual sanction. You have not been found guilty of anything. You are just being investigated, or a matter has been investigated, but you're told that you have to leave, you have to go home.
So let's say you're absolved of any wrongdoing, you get back the money retroactively?
You just get back the money that you have lost. However, because of how interdiction has been dealt with in the public sector, people have been on interdiction for years. They've lost their house, their car, their wives, their children have abandoned them because they can't support them, all because of this interdiction.
So the penalties in terms of what they take from you in terms of the reduced pay, is that heavy? Like, what are the range? What's the range of it?
It could be up to 75% of your salary is
you still get 75% of your salary?
Taken away.
So you're just being investigated. You haven't been charged or anything or found culpable. And you lose 75% of your salary?
You have lost 75% of your pay based on interdiction.
And also, if you are criminally charged, that's a different thing. So if you've been charged with a criminal offense,
you will get no pay.
And what will happen is, the way how the law is structured now is that until that criminal offense has been concluded, your disciplinary matter will stand in abeyance. And we know, unfortunately, that our criminal justice system, the wheels don't turn as quickly as we would like. So once you are charged with a criminal offense and that case is going on through the system, as long as that case is going on, you will be on interdiction until that matter is concluded, so you can step now into the disciplinary process.
There's this part where we talk about the principle of natural justice. Are those sorts of policies regarding interdiction where you lose up to 75% of your pay, or if it's a criminal matter you're charged for, even if you're proven to be innocent and you're losing your pay, you can't support your family, does in terms of natural justice, somebody the presumption of innocence before, presumption of innocence then, Ms. Roper, does that follow?
It has been tested in our courts in a case related to Faith Webster and I think the Public Service Commission, where she was placed on interdiction and she challenged it. And the ruling of the court was, we appreciate that at that stage, there really still hasn't been any substantive action yet taken. And therefore, what the case has established is that at that interdiction stage, the employee, the public officer, needs to be afforded an opportunity to say to the relevant authority the reason, given an opportunity to say, these are the reasons that I should either not be placed on interdiction, or if they're going on interdiction, why it is that their salary should not be reduced.
Right.
And so with that, we have now, the courts have intervened. And the principle now is, if interdiction is in question, it's not that you have to set up a panel, although some people do, but you must give that person who is facing interdiction an opportunity to provide a response, be it in writing or orally, before the decision is, as it relates to how much the salary is going to be reduced. Because if
pause on that point, because given what you've said in this case where Dr. Dixon is concerned,
yes,
he's already losing parts of his salary based on this report that I was reading earlier. Does that raise any concern for you?
Oh, it definitely does. We have always felt, when I was practicing in the public sector, that interdiction and weight is being dealt with is a punishment before the punishment. He has not been found guilty. He has been charged, yes, of participating and breaching the staff orders.
Allegation.
Right. And so that is now to be dealt with through the disciplinary process. But until that is dealt with, he's losing pay. He can't carry out his function as a doctor. And one asks the question, how does the role of a doctor impacts, how does him carry out political activity impacts his role as a doctor? Does it have that same nexus as somebody else who's a decision maker? And should we have a different standard applied to persons who are decision makers, who want to participate in political activity, versus technocrats who are not decision makers? They are just delivering services. Should there be a different standard in treating with them? And I think that is where we have now reached in terms of what people are calling for, what do other standards say, what has happened, where we have gotten our model from. The Westminster Whitehall model has been reviewed in the UK, and they have said that certain categories of public officers can participate in political activity, and they have made it quite clear that there are certain ones that cannot. So it's not no longer broad prohibition as we have it here in Jamaica.
And in the UK, can doctors participate?
Well, no? I've not gone to see what categories are there that can participate.
Do you think doctors should be allowed to participate?
I don't want to pronounce on it. I don't want to give an opinion on it. I want the process to determine
I want your considered opinion as an expert. But before you give me that considered opinion, I want you to consider it genuinely in about the 2 minutes that we have to take this break right now when we come back. I just want to get a few more questions in with our attorney at law and also our trade unionist here on Lead Story Prime on this issue of interdiction now facing Dr. Aujae Dixon. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Your journey with a Jane Bank Small Business Loan, with small business loans with as little as $10,000 and up to $4 million.
The time is 8.
What's up, everybody? Fraser McConnell here. We're in Qiddiya, Saudi Arabia for the FIA Extreme H World Cup. Behind me is my Zeroid Motorsports Extreme H car, and you can catch all of the action on CVM Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Don't miss it, all live.
FIAH World Cup, brought to you by Texaco.
Where it all begins. The quest to become great. Inspired by those who went before them, these 4 boys dream of playing in the ISSA schoolboy football competitions.
Will you score this for Casey? Will you score? It's a shot, it's a goal!
And it's a shot, and it's a goal! And Casey has won the Manning Cup, and they will play Clarendon College in the Olivia Shield.
Welcome back to Lead Story Prime here on CVM TV. I'm Giovanni Dennis. I'm speaking with O'Neill Grant, who is the former president of the Jamaica Civil Service Association, and also Carla Ann Harris Roper, attorney at law. You were speaking before the break, Mr. Grant, and I just wanted to put a bit of context in it as well. Lambert Brown, who is a PNP senator and also a trade unionist for over 50 years, he says that while Dixon works in the public service, he was not covered under the public service staff orders used in the matter.
It's a debatable area because
why is it debatable?
The ruling by Justice Sykes in the case in Morant Bay specifically cited the Civil Service Establishment Act as what gives rise to the person being a public officer or not. And based on my understanding, the post of medical doctors are in the Civil Service Establishment Act. Now, whether or not that does create, because of the fact that the health authorities have been created under statute, does that now remove them from the coverage of the staff orders because they now have a board? Is the board that is under the regional health authorities a board that is established that removes them from the Central Civil Service, or are they a part of the Central Civil Service but have a different administrative arrangement for the management of discipline and so on and so forth? What must be seen when we examine that act is whether or not there has been delegation of authority in relation to discipline. And if there's no clear delegation of authority, then they will still fall under the remit of the public service regulations and the staff orders. And that is what is extremely important in considering whether or not Dr. Dixon still falls under the remit. I can't say whether or not the handling of the matter was in accordance with the public service regulations, because the Public Services Commission is the only entity that can determine if an officer should be interdicted or not. And I have not seen anywhere being said that a reference was made to the Public Service Commission for Dr. Dixon to be interdicted. So that's a question that needs to be answered when we are doing the investigation, whether or not the Services Commission had an opinion in whether or not the interdiction should have happened in this instance.
You were shaking your head when he began speaking on that matter. Why?
Because to me, it's as clear as mud. I think when we moved the model, and I don't doubt that the model as it relates to the Regional Health Authority does have a lot of benefits to it, especially in relation to how service may be delivered and so on. But I think we may not have done the back-end work in HR to ensure that how workers within the space are situated has been clearly defined. It's not as clear as it could be, and I could say the same thing about the executive agency model. It's still not very clear, and thus it is not just about interdiction, it's about appointments, it's about terminations, it's about pensions. So there are some areas that, you know, we have moved the model along for the benefit of Jamaicans, but there are some challenges that exist, and we shouldn't waste a crisis. We should take the opportunity to ensure and to look how it is that we can try to, you know, make the whole system provide more clarity for those who have to work within it.
And it's a question that has been asked ever since we had the establishment of the regional health authorities and the executive agencies. Are they civil servants or are they just public officers? And we know that civil servants are a subset of the public service. A lot of people don't understand that civil servants only work in the line ministries. But for some reason, we have found that some of the executive agencies continue to be treated like civil servants at times, and at other times.
Is there some inconsistency where that is concerned?
There is.
Because, for example, is there a rational basis for teachers being treated differently from doctors?
One could say that they don't interface with public administration as a doctor. They don't affect policy as a doctor would. They don't affect policy as a civil servant.
A doctor affects policy?
Because they only deliver a service at the point of contact with the public. So if they are in a role or position in the organization that they have to interface with policy, then that's a different thing. But based on what I'm understanding, where this particular doctor is we are just about out of time. Carla and Roper has said we can't waste a good crisis. Sure. What say you in terms of where we go coming out of this? I agree. It gives us an opportunity to look at what we have been doing for decades under the Whitehall model, the Westminster model, to determine whether or not it is still relevant to a modern public service that we have here in Jamaica, because we have changed the public service.
And in your considered opinion, as I asked before the break?
In my considered opinion, I think there are some positions that impact neutrality that we have to look at very carefully, that these don't give the public the perception that there is a lack of impartiality where we are carrying out public services. It has to be looked at, because we cannot damage the core of public services, which is impartiality and neutrality.
Okay, your thoughts, final comments?
We have a challenge in terms of the constitutionality of what is happening. And, you know, for me as an attorney, I am into principles. And if how the system or the structure is going to be, if we're not able to legislate it at this point, which is one way to do it, another way would be to have an interpretation by the courts. And that would be a way for us to appreciate how we go forward.
All right, I want to thank you so much, Carla and Harris Roper and O'Neill Grant, for sharing their views on this matter of the interdiction of Dr. Aujae Dixon and the bigger issues here. Now, before we hear from the parliamentarians, let's go to this Vox Pop. We asked members of the public to weigh in on the issue.
We need people with qualification, people with expertise, not just anybody to put in politics. People that understand the day-to-day life of normal Jamaicans.
I think they would have given you a more fair system than the other one.
They are the best one to really enter into Parliament. If it's it is so, they can enter into Parliament, because they know the best. If they give them that opportunity and a chance to do so, it is a good idea.
We need
Okay then, so we have with us in studio now opposition spokesperson on justice Zuleika Jess and a member of the Jamaica Labour Party's Communication Task Force, Senator Marlon Morgan. Ms. Jess, now following the interdiction of Dr. Aujae Dixon, you sent out a media release, in which you're pretty much saying you strongly condemn what you call the unfair interdiction of Dr. Aujae Dixon, who was suspended from duties because he participated as a candidate in the September 3 general election. And I can hear many people watching and saying, listen, rules are rules. and PNP has raised concerns in the past. Think specifically to Rhoda Moore Crawford in 2020 and issues raised with Tova Hamilton when they were running while working. Your response to that?
I think you've hit the nail squarely on the head. Rules are rules, and the Constitution of Jamaica is the supreme rule of the law. And so it is really trite knowledge that any subsidiary piece of legislation, any regulation, any staff order which is found to be in contradiction of the supreme rule of the land really ought probably to be struck down. And that is what has happened in this particular case. We have staff orders which are clearly in violation of fundamental rights and freedoms enshrined in the Constitution, the rights to freedom of expression, freedom of association, freedom of movement, and all of those similar rights are now in jeopardy simply because of the position articulated by the staff order, which specifically prohibit persons like Dr. Dixon from offering themselves to serve.
Marlon Morgan, you seem to be seething and itching to make your point on this issue. Your thoughts on it? Well, let me just quickly go first, though, to help put context to what you'll be saying. Your release from the JLP on this issue, and in your release, you said, and let me just quickly read a little bit of it. You're saying, you're pretty much accusing the PNP of what you call bare-faced hypocrisy and convenient application of the principle in respect of the interdiction of Aujae Dixon. Why do you say that?
Well, contrary to your notion of me seething or perhaps trumping at the bit, I'm just being my usual calm and collective self. So just to be clear though, you would have heard my colleague, Ms. Jess, making mention of the Constitution of the land being the supreme law of the land, and that is quite correct. What we find interesting and quite curious, however, is the fact that these observations were never ventured into the public domain when in 2019, Julian Robinson, then General Secretary of the PNP, made certain observations in relation to Robert Morgan. The PNP would have made certain observations in relation to Rhoda Moore Crawford, and as recently as the 10th of February this year, the PNP came after me, not
just
knowing
for clarity,
that I had separated from the Minister of Education.
For my viewers, in relation to Robert Morgan and Rhoda Moore Crawford, just give the full context.
So just to be clear, Robert Morgan had been engaged at the time as Director of Communications at the Office of the Prime Minister. You know, many would have considered him a political appointee because to the extent that you would have had a change of government, he, in as much as he came in with the PM, would have had to exit the service with the PM. But the gist of the point I'm making is that the PNP, in their classical tradition, is literally making it up as they go along, in the sense that they are expressing and standing on positions on the basis of political expediency. So it is what is politically convenient and expedient for them from time to time, which is why they would have expressed views in relation to this same matter. People who are employed to the government service, who are becoming actively involved in political activity, to include political campaigning, political engagement, and of course contesting elections. You have not heard these observations that Ms. Jess made just now from them in relation to other people such as myself when the PNP-YO came after me in February of this year. So just to be clear, I had been engaged for a number of years as Senior Technical Coordinator at the Ministry of Education, which was essentially a civil service type engagement. I had to step away from the civil service to get back on the political path, which I did in the middle of last year essentially, when I became a member of the Jamaica Labour Party's Communications Task Force. I had to step away from the government service because I knew that the truth of the matter is that becoming a part of the political fray in that way and engaging in partisan activity would have contravened and offended the civil service, the public service staff orders. So just to be clear, the principle that the staff orders is seeking to protect and preserve here is the whole notion, as O'Neill Grant made mention of in the previous segment, of civil service neutrality and, of course, neutrality in the public service, because when members of the public interface with the government service and present for service, they would want to be able, Giovanni and viewers, to access those services without the encumbrance of partisanship or even the perception of partisanship. Because Zuleika Jess, Lambert Brown, Mark Golding and Aujae Dixon, I don't think, Giovanni, that they would be comfortable with a chief of defense staff who wears a green shirt on a platform or contest elections, and I don't think Zuleika Jess would be comfortable with a police commissioner.
Wear green doors or soda. Give me a second, Mr. Morgan. I'm going to a break. They can wear green either way.
That's a good one.
Let's go to the break here on Lead Story Prime. We're talking about the interdiction of Dr. Aujae Dixon, and we're getting reactions from both the PNP and the JLP. Stay with us. You don't want to miss our final segment.
Protecting Jamaica's borders is a key priority for the Jamaica Customs Agency. The JCA will remain vigilant and resolute in effectively fulfilling this mandate. The time, brought to you by the Jamaica Customs Agency, is
8:45.
Let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins, and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yeah.
Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
Every dream conquered is another dream gained. I land and I fly again like a jet plane. Headed straight in your direction, 'cause I'm wiser, one step closer. I'm winning 'cause I work so hard. And the music keeps on playing, and the people them I say we are my show tonight. Oh, what a feeling! Don't stop dreaming. Keep on believing in the power of the feeling. Whatever you want, take a chance. Song in your heart, step in your dance. You got a spark, don't put it down. Shine your lights
The People's National Party, according to Senator Marlon Morgan, are being bare-faced hypocrites on this issue. Is that so, Ms. Jess?
I think that Marlon was accurate in his statement right before the break, insofar as he mentioned that in relation to Rhoda Crawford, for example, the People's National Party never actually took that matter to court. But more importantly, there was never any action taken by the government against persons, those who fall under their umbrella of membership, insofar as they are public sector workers. There was similarly never any action or sanctions applied to Tova Hamilton, even though she was employed to TP Deco at the time that she offered herself to serve as Member of Parliament candidate. So the point I'm making is that there seems to have been, if we're going to talk about hypocritical application, then really you look no further than how the government has actually dealt with the various persons. And it appears as though the staff orders are only applied insofar as those individuals are running under the banner of the People's National Party.
Marlon Morgan, how you respond to that?
Quite simply, Ms. Jess, with the greatest of respect, is dealing with a case of apples and oranges, quite literally, in the sense that the officers she enumerated just now are persons who would have been employed to respective agencies. Yes, in the case of Robert Morgan, he would have been employed, as I said earlier, to the office of the Prime Minister. Those persons had essentially signaled an interest in contesting seats. They did not go the route of. They did not. They did not go the route of. No, they did not go the route, however, of nominating and contesting elections and so on. In fact, those persons, like myself, ended up separating from the government service prior to advancing their political interests insofar as becoming JLP standard bearers.
Well,
it is a matter of recorded history. It's a matter of fact.
She wasn't yet.
I believe Rhoda was on a program. I think it may have been a program on radio where she signaled an interest.
Still working with the government as a public sector worker. You never applied that same staff order to her.
So Rhoda, you have to put that question and that issue to Rhoda's employer. In this case, Mr. Aujae Dixon's employer is the Southern Regional Health Authority.
Application of the staff
order. But with the greatest respect, Ms. Jess and Giovanni, we have respective employers across the government service. What she's putting to me is a question that is properly for the respective employers of those persons in question. In the case of Tova Hamilton, the TPDCO. In the case of Ms. Crawford, the Hart NSTA Trust. But just to be very clear.
And in relation to Aujae Dixon, the Southern Regional
Health Authority. So his employer has elected to act in this matter. Though Ms. Jess may impute motive, she may seek to,
in fact, this is what she's saying. She's saying such a move, whether the result of overly zealous application of policy or misinterpretation of staff orders, has the effect of silencing those who seek to exercise their constitutional rights, Ms. Jess. And in fact, you're going on to make the point in this release that you sent out that you're calling for urgent policy changes. We have just about 7 or so minutes ago in the program.
Policy changes because, Aujae Dixon has found himself in a position where his employer, the Southern Regional Health Authority, has charged that he has contravened the staff orders governing the public service. But just to be very clear, this is an opportune time for us. The Constitutional Reform Committee is an opportune medium and forum that some of these issues concerning our constitutional arrangement as a country can be brought and taken into sharp focus, as opposed to us seeking to cherry pick issues and just being politically expedient and opportunistic from one point to another. The question Ms. Jess has been putting to me are questions properly for the respective employers of persons. But the PNP-YO, as I mentioned earlier in the segment, came for me in February because they assumed that I was still with the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information at the time, when in fact I had to separate from the civil service prior to going back on the park and ensuring that the PNP received a 3rd successive term in opposition. But just to be clear, before we went to the break in the last segment, I simply made the point, and I will put it again to Ms. Jess and indeed the viewers out there. The simple point: would you be comfortable with a permanent secretary who has the same constitutional rights as does Dr. Aujae Dixon, with the police commissioner or any of those other sensitive post holders, or indeed a normal civil servant? Would you be comfortable with those persons contesting elections and expressly manifesting and exhibiting political preferences? Would you be so comfortable?
What Anil Grant said before the break, in fact, was that there are changes to who are allowed to run for office, for example, in the Westminster model, which we follow here in Jamaica, and that this is something that we really should be considering, really and truly. Ms. Jess, you're calling for policy changes. We're seeing what's happening elsewhere in the Caribbean. In Barbados, for example, this was challenged, and as Mr. Grant mentioned in the previous segment, we're seeing changes over in the United Kingdom as well in terms of who can run for office, serving in the public domain. What in Jamaica do you think needs to happen?
I'll address the issue of policy reform, but permit me to simply address one item of what my friend indicated just now, because he suggests very quickly, he suggested that it appears as though I were seeking to impute motive. And I wish to make it clear. Jamaica will also decide, because I know that persons are aware of the facts. What has happened in the case of Dr. Dixon is that the board is actually run by persons who are clear JLP activists. There are Jamaica Labour Party sitting councillors who are serving on the board of Southern Regional Health Authority, the very same authority or the board that has issued the interdiction notice. Councillor from Clarendon, councillor from Manchester, JLP councillors. And so I do not seek, nor do I sit here purporting to impute motive. One can decide whether those persons are in a position to make free and fair decisions, regardless of their political responsibilities. Now, as it relates to the issue of political reform and policy reform, I believe that there is an urgent need for reform as it relates to this aspect. It's
what do you think
important.
needs to happen? You have about 30 seconds because I want to give him a fair chance to respond to what you say and give me his final views as well.
It is very important that we bring our staff orders in line with recent judicial decisions and recent changes which we see taking place right across the board, not just in Caribbean countries, near neighboring countries, but rather even in England, in various mature jurisdictions where they understand and appreciate that people really ought properly to be allowed the right to offer themselves for service. Their constitutional rights shouldn't be infringed on a purely willy-nilly basis.
So some people should be allowed to run while some others basically perhaps
It is reasonably justifiable to allow for an individual to offer themselves for service without necessarily trampling on their constitutional rights.
Marlon Morgan.
So the question is, would it be reasonable for a permanent secretary to run and express themselves in the same way that Dr. Dixon has?
But we're not talking about a permanent secretary. We're talking about Dr. Dixon.
Exactly, but the concept and the principle has to be applied.
At certain levels.
All
Again,
persons,
the point
all persons in Jamaica
Grant was making
have
earlier
constitutional rights.
Was that there are some levels of people that perhaps should be able to be allowed to run.
But what would bar? Following this particular constitutional test, yes, what would therefore bar an officer in a position such as Commissioner of Police or indeed Chief of Defence Staff?
Is this something that both parties can discuss and come to an agreement
or
on?
Permanent Secretary, which is why I've said in my press release that the Constitutional Reform Committee would be an appropriate forum. But just to be clear, Giovanni, Ms. Jess just now made mention of the composition of the Southern Regional Health Authority. To my mind, the persons on the board and indeed the composition of the board do not abdicate or relieve them rather of the obligation they have vis-a-vis enforcing and seeing to it that the requisite provisions per the staff orders
it's a
are
selective
adhered
enforcement
to.
she's mentioning though. That was
it doesn't relieve them of that. So the action that they have taken, I reason that and I receive that as action being taken by them in furtherance of upholding and adhering to the provisions set out in the staff orders.
Can both of you agree on a way forward on this?
Well,
Ms. Jess and Mr. Morgan, can both parties agree on how that
I like to believe in possibilities being endless, which is why the government has created a forum for this kind of dialogue insofar as the Constitutional Reform Committee. So the PNP, Ms. Jess is
this
the
discussion will have to continue. My producer is screaming in my ears for about 2 minutes now that I'm entirely out of time. But of course, the discussion is really and truly just starting, and we could not possibly discuss everything here on Lead Story Prime. But that's all the time we have for you this week. Come back to us next week, same time, same place, for a different but hopefully just as interesting and hot topic for us to discuss. I'm Giovanni Dennis. This has been Lead Story Prime. Stay tuned to CVM TV.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Fraser McConnell here. We're in Qiddiya, Saudi Arabia for the FIA Extreme H World Cup. Behind me is my Zeroid Motorsports Extreme H car, and you can catch all of the action on CVM Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Don't miss it, all live.
FIAH World Cup, brought to you by Texaco.
It's time.
Welcome to High School Pitchside. We have another fascinating episode for you.
More matches, more big clashes.
Let's talk about some of the big rivalries coming up this week.
More of your favorite features.
And trust me, you won't fall asleep in this history class.
And of course, we always want to hear from you.
Hear from your alma mater's players and coaches in Team Talk.
You know we can't leave you out. So send us your messages on social media and watch us react on FanView.
And you know we love a good little debate, right, Gio? We've got you covered all season long on High School Pitchside.
High School Pitchside, your ultimate guide to all things schoolboy football, Thursdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV. Let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Aujae Higgins, and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yeah.
Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.